I steal from people all the time. I'm as bad as Claudia.
What? Excuse me, what? I steal from people all the time. I'm as bad as Claudine Gay, is what he's about to say. Oops, James. Oops, sometimes doing an extemporaneous speech where you don't script it beforehand leads you to saying the quiet part out loud. What was that? What was that? What, James?
Podcast is getting downloaded 10 million times because I thought it was profound. So you don't know where your message is going to get and where it's not going to get. I steal from people all the time. I steal from people all the time. I'm as bad as Claudia.
What? Excuse me, what? I steal from people all the time. I'm as bad as Claudine Gay, is what he's about to say. Oops, James. Oops, sometimes doing an extemporaneous speech where you don't script it beforehand leads you to saying the quiet part out loud. What was that? What was that? What, James?
Podcast is getting downloaded 10 million times because I thought it was profound. So you don't know where your message is going to get and where it's not going to get. I steal from people all the time. 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 I'm as bad as Claudine Gay.
We are here because socialists speak in a coded language. And the best way to learn that language and become inoculated to that language is by listening to what they say in the real world. You have to keep in mind that they are using the same vocabulary as us. They are not using the same dictionary. They have different definitions for the words. And if you don't understand what those definitions are, you fundamentally do not understand them. But as long as you're going to be here, you're going to follow my rules, okay? Number one, the reason that we do Socialism Saturday is that socialists speak in a coded language. They may use the same vocabulary as us. They do not use the same dictionary as us, okay? Socialists speak in code. They may use the same vocabulary as us. They do not use the same dictionary as us. First thing you need to know, socialists speak in code. The reason that we watch this content is because we want to understand what their language means. Socialists use the same vocabulary as us. They do not use the same dictionary as us. So it is very important that we listen to the context of what they're saying to be able to ascertain what they mean. The reason that we do Socialism Saturday is because socialists speak in a coded language, okay? They may use the same vocabulary as us. They do not use the same dictionary.
Communists, this is a rule everybody needs to have in their head. I want you to really pay attention to this. Keep it in the back of your head. It's going to be very familiar, but it's a little like,
oh God, everyone needs to brace themselves for what he's about to say.
Cooked, so you got to think through the words a little bit. Communists share your vocabulary, but they do not share your dictionary.
Have we heard that before? Have we heard that before? Have you guys heard that before? Have you guys heard that on literally every episode of Socialism Saturday for like a year? Has everyone heard that before? Has everyone heard that before? Communists share your vocabulary, but they don't share your dictionary. Where have we heard that before? Where have we heard that before? Where have we heard that before? You want to tell me James isn't watching my stuff? Because it seems to me that everyone in my audience has heard that before. And James, I haven't listened to your content in years. So where'd you get that, James? Where'd you get that? Where'd you get that line, James? Because I've been saying that literally as an introduction for Socialism Saturday for a really long ass time. Where did you get that line, James? You gave this speech 2 weeks ago. Where'd you hear that, James? Who do you know, James? Who do you know that is like the person that's been decoding socialist language so that you actually understand it for fucking years now? Where'd you get that line, James? Where'd you get that line? Communists share your vocabulary, but they don't share your dictionary. James Lindsay, I like to steal things. I steal as much as Claudine Gay. Everyone in my audience knows where that line comes from, James. Verbatim. Not unadded. This is exactly the same thing as he did with the colleges of education stuff. He stole that verbatim too. He's saying verbatim what I've been saying since 2022. Everyone in my audience knows where you got that line, James. Every single person knows where you got that line. Every single person here knows where you got it. A wise man once said, I steal all the time. Oh, James Lindsay said that less than 5 minutes ago in this very speech. And isn't it a coincidence that James is telling his audience not to listen to me? James is telling his audience not to watch me. James is only discrediting me. James will never debate me because he knows I would kick his ass up and down the fucking debate floor if he ever fucking tried. Isn't it a coincidence that for weeks now, James has been encouraging people to ignore everything I say and everything I do? And no, don't look at that video evidence. Don't do that. Because that bitch is crazy. Where have we heard that line before? I say that verbatim every single fucking week and have for years. Even your fans that watch me, James, know where that line comes from. It's clear to all of us, bro. Let's just listen again.
Share your vocabulary, but they do not share your dictionary. In other words, they use the same words that you do, but they don't mean the same thing by those words.
James Lindsay is obsessed with lying to his audience. What crazy things can he get them to believe? He does it irresponsibly to pocket all that money from the Mills for Liberty. The left hates capitalism, but James won't admit it. He refuses to believe queer theory destabilizes normativity. Gender binary and the nuclear family. James blocks the truth, smears people who try to show him. Creates an echo chamber for himself to reinforce his fantasy. He used to believe in something. What happened? Mills for Liberty. Gnostic sex cult, building his own world. A Gnostic sex cult, unhinged from reality. Totally lost in what can we do? But mock him relentlessly. It's not a Gnostic sex cult, James. No, it's not. Stop lying to your audience. No, it's not. It's not Gnostic change. Visionary Nardini tells us queer liberation means the annihilation of capitalism. Catch up, change, whiteness means capitalism. Queer theory hates capitalism. Whiteness means capitalism. Queer theory hates capitalism. Whiteness means capitalism. It's all about capitalism. Everyone knows it's capitalism. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, change. It's capitalism. Whoa. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, change. It's capitalism. It's all about capitalism. Everyone knows it's capitalism. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, change. It's capitalism. It's capitalism. To pocket all that money from the mills for liberty. Capitalism, but James won't admit it. He refuses to believe queer theory stabilizes normativity, gender binary, and the nuclear family. But James blocks the truth, smears people who try to show him, creates an echo chamber for himself to reinforce his fantasy. Is to believe in something. What happens for liberty? Gnostic sex cult believe in some world. Gnostic sex cult unhinged from reality. He's totally lost it. What can we do but mock him relentlessly?
Well, hey everyone. Hello, fellow Gnostic sex cultists. I hope you enjoyed that little prolonged intro. I know some people saw the clip I posted earlier, and apparently James has been apprised that we found the video because it was funny. It really was. It's one of those weird coincidences because you guys know I believe in psychic tree, and I have a psychic on my channel later tonight. We do a show every Tuesday night at 9:30. I really do believe in this stuff. And several weeks ago, Joshua said something to me that was so oddly specific. It was one of those weird things. He doesn't do this often. I've worked with Joshua for years and years and years. He does not do this very often. He said to me, we were talking about whether or not this, like, really escalating this feud with James Lindsay was a good idea for me. And I personally think it is. And Joshua actually corroborates that. And you know, that's something that I'm absolutely leaning into now. But Joshua said something to me. He said, James is afraid that you're going to find some video of him doing a random talk somewhere, and it's not going to be like a big, like, official thing. It's going to be like at a college or a church or something like that. He's on a stage, and James is afraid that you're going to find that video. So there's something in that video that you need to see. And lo and behold, yesterday we watched a video that some random person posted to a YouTube channel with 76 subscribers. It only had like 1,000 views or something, of a speech that they obviously recorded on their iPhone of James at a Turning Point USA conference. And lo and behold, in that video, James sounds shockingly like me. And now, so we have to give Joshua his $2 Joshua's right super chat. Joshua seemed to be onto something there. But it seems as though James is, I'm not even going to bother looking at James's Twitter account. You know what? I don't care. I don't care. I reached my goddamn limit of caring what James Lindsay says yesterday. And so James can pinky swear, trust me, bro. I swear I said it first. I swear I've been using that line since 2001. That bitch is crazy. Just because all Carlin says and does is talk about decoding socialist language, and she's able to do it far better than I can ever dare dream to do it. And she actually teaches people stuff where I fuck around and tell people that everything is Gnosticism. But pinky swear, trust me, bro. I came up with it first. Pinky swear, trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. Receipts, James. Receipts. I want some fucking receipts, because I know I can go back for years in my content, literally for years. And I was using that line for a while. I used that line for a long ass time before I made it the introduction to Socialism Saturday. I used that line for probably like at least a year, if not more. So I want receipts. I want receipts. That's how I feel about that. He can eat a dick. I don't care what he has to say. I just finished yesterday's stream. James Lindsay, I steal things. Also, James Lindsay, I admitted to theft. I hope no one in this audience knows what I'm about to say is something I'm stealing. I mean, I just think it's funny. I really do. I just think it's funny that James wants us to believe that he's not stealing things when, hang on, let's just I'm just really briefly, let's just remind ourselves. James is trying to say, I swear I'm not stealing it. Okay, James, let's listen.
I steal from people all the time. I'm as bad as Claude.
What's that again?
I steal from people all the time. I'm as bad as Claude.
Does everyone get it? One more time.
I steal from people all the time. I'm as bad as Claude.
Frozen. If you want to keep listening to that, you can go back and refer to the clip on the channel. So James shouldn't be announcing in speeches, I steal from people all the time, and then use language not once but twice, because he did it twice in that speech. He used language that sounded shockingly similar to me. Shockingly similar to stuff. Does James expect us to believe that all of a sudden James became a staffing expert? Because I was an industrial organizational psychologist for 10 years before I got into this YouTube stuff. I think about things like staffing pools. If you watch that clip that I posted on the channel, James says something about the teaching pool that comes from something I was directly saying back in 2022 about the teaching pool being completely corrupted, and that is why school choice will never work, and I provide full receipts in that video that I was saying that shit back in early 2022. When did James become an expert in staffing? Because I was an expert in staffing before I ever got into this shit. And so he's mimicking that language. When did James produce entire programs about decoding socialist language? When did James create a massive archive of clips talking about decoding socialist language? Oh, he hasn't done it. The closest thing he's done is on New Discourses. He has some encyclopedia where if you go into the encyclopedia on New Discourses, and let's just like look at it real quick, and this is not what we're going to talk about all day, but we're going to talk about it for a second. If you go into James's encyclopedia on New Discourses, do you get clear and simple definitions of things? Where is it? The SJ encyclopedia. Do you get clear and simple definitions of things? Abolitionism. No, you don't get clear definitions of things. You get a fucking dissertation. You get a fucking dissertation about what that thing is. Let's find it. Let's find a word that is something that we talk about all the time. Hang on. What's a good word? What is a good word? And by the way, this encyclopedia has had a lot of work to do for a long ass fucking time. What is a good word that cisnormativity. This is actually a perfect word to use for today's thing because we're talking about Mary Nardini gang. Let's see. What did Maria C say? Hang on, we need to go back. James never mentioned Larry Elder before. I talk about Larry Elder being the black face of white supremacy all the time. That was another thing. That was another fucking thing. I listened to James a long time, but I heard Carlin saying it before James, and I've only been here a year or so. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? But you know what? Like, James wants to pretend that he's the one decoding socialist language. All right, let's take a look at cis normativity on James's website. A persistent finding in past research reifies a gendered cis-normative bias whereby heterosexual men compared to heterosexual women have been found overwhelmingly less supportive of transgender individuals in quantitative studies conducted in the United States and Canada, China, Malaysia, Philippines, Poland, Singapore, Sweden, Thailand, and the United Kingdom. I suggest this finding reflects a synergistic relationship between transphobia and homophobia, or put another way, an overarching presence of hetero-cis normativity whereby normal is to be both heterosexual and cisgendered, and is not normal and therefore acceptable to be prejudiced towards non-heterosexual, non-cisgender individuals. New discourses commentary. Cis-normativity refers to the idea that it is both normal and normative for a person's gender identity and biological sex to accord with one's another to be cisgender, i.e., male men and female women within the gender and queer theories of critical social justice. See also gender studies. Seeing it as normal for men to identify as male or women to identify as female is considered to be a form of oppression that harms and erases people whose sex and gender identities don't match. These include both normatively transgender identities, but also includes gender nonconforming identities such as non-binary, agender, bigender, trigender, and rarely exogender. It is the fact that it is considered normal, thus expected to be part of normal behavior, i.e., normativity, that it is deemed oppressive by the relevant theories, and it goes on and on and on. You're going to tell me that James has been decoding language? Does anyone understand what we just read? Well, you guys might understand it because we can read between the lines and understand that James is writing like a socialist. So he's saying 17 words he's saying 17 words per sentence more than is required to actually say what is cis normativity? Cis normativity is a reference to capitalism. I'm sorry, that's a reference to what it is. Queer theory is about destabilizing normativity. Normativity is code for capitalism. We know that because the Mary Nardini gang told us that. And the ultimate goal of queer theory, or the objective of queer liberation, is to annihilate capitalism. We also know that because the Mary Nardini gang told us that. But you want me to believe that James understands same vocabulary, different dictionary, and he's been pinky swear, trust me, bro, using it for years? Okay. I mean, people can believe what they want. But the reality is that everyone on my channel knows where that came from. And the people that are watching my content, a lot of them listen to a lot of James content as well. So it's not as though my people have never been exposed to James's content. For those of you who listened to James before you got to me, or even during, like you could still be listening to James now, who do you hear say that? Do you hear me say that, or do you hear him say that? What's your opinion? Objectively. Naruto says, towards the end, James Lindsay got close to saying whiteness is capitalism with the Larry Elder is the blackface of white supremacy line. Well, I'm sure he definitely didn't get that idea from me, especially since James still talks about whiteness as though it has anything to do with skin color. So we definitely know James understands that. He talks about whiteness as though it has something to do with skin color one day, and then pretends that it's a reference to capitalism, which is a word that he more or less refuses to say. No, I'm not going to watch his decolonization video. No. Correction, used to listen to James, never fucking again. Yep, that came from me. Everyone knows I said it. He's been close, but he's too wordy. Gayla has clips from me from like 16 months ago saying this. No, you never listened to him? I know Human Centipede listened to him. James can't turn a saying that plainly. No, he can't. It's impossible. See, here's the thing. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this because I was having feelings about this all last night. And listen, man, I think we all knew this was happening. Like I am not remotely. I sat down yesterday thinking we were going to watch that Turning Point video and it was just going to be like a chance to laugh at James and his Gnosticism bullshit. I really did. I didn't think that was going to have anything to do with what it ended up being. And instead, we get him saying, I steal people's work all the time, and then sound shockingly similar to things that I've been saying for years that are way too concise for James to come up with on his own. When we compare that with the writing that James does and the content that he makes and the 4-hour podcasts about Hegel and Marcuse and whatever the hell else, I think people are smart enough to come to their own conclusions. Here's the problem. James has a massive audience that he's lying to. And I don't know how to fix that problem. Because there are realities to this. And one of the realities is that I don't want to do what James is doing. I don't want to have to kiss the asses of these large, politically driven, astroturfed organizations like Moms for Liberty. You guys know, by the way, that Moms for Liberty is a well-funded political machine that popped up to support Ron DeSantis. You guys know that. Everyone knows that, right? It popped up during COVID as a way to support Ron DeSantis for president. Their initial goal was about COVID restrictions in schools, and so it was to create a political movement around COVID restrictions, which was Ron DeSantis' big thing at the time. And then when COVID went away, they had to do something with all that money, and they had to keep the grift going because Ron DeSantis was about to run for president. And that's when they switched over to book banning. I never want to work with organizations like that. Absolutely not. Not in any way. I never want to work with Turning Point USA. Charlie Kirk can eat my ass. And I genuinely do mean that. I never want to do speeches in front of the European Parliament. I just don't want to do that. I don't want to go on all these shows. I don't like it. I think it is disruptive to my life in a way that I don't like. And people might not understand that, but I went through this phase where I was the conservative darling that was trotted out, being used to advance a political movement that I didn't even agree with, and I didn't know what was happening at the time, and I will never, ever, 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 ever allow myself to be used like that again. And people might not agree with that, and they might say, well, Carlin, you need to get more numbers. You just need to do those things. No, I don't. Like, I put myself through a lot to do this. That is a step too far. Maria says, I listened to James forever. I learned same vocabulary, different dictionary from Carlin. Oh, thank you, Maria. Thank you. So I've long accepted that, and I actually really do like this idea. I don't want to do what James is doing. What I want to do is create my own subculture. What I want to do is create this underground cult movement that appeals to the right people. I don't want the largest possible audience. I want the right audience. I never want to be put in a position again where I need to coddle to conservatives and kiss the asses of Christians. I don't want to censor myself. I don't want to have to hold back. I don't want to do any of that. And yeah, I don't want business partners like James either. I don't want business partners. This is why I have always wanted to do this grassroots funding thing. But that also does present problems. And the problem that it presents is I inherently have less numbers than James does. And I probably always will have less numbers than James does. And that's where I need everyone's help. Because I know the people who consume my content fucking love my content. I am a person that you either love or hate. And there is no in between. You either love me or you hate me. And there are a lot of people that really, 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 really fucking hate me. And usually those people are sad, pathetic people with a lot of self-esteem issues that never quite got over the trauma that mommy and daddy inflicted on them when they were children. And they probably need to go to therapy. But that's beside the point. There are a lot of fucking people who hate me. But on the flip side of that, there are a lot of fucking people who love me. And I know that the audience I have loves me, is there for me. You guys have always been so supportive of me. And now what I need to ask of you is that I need your help in finding more people that fit in to this community. Because this is, at the end of the day, a numbers game. Now, I don't think that we need the numbers that James has, or I don't need to play the fucking mainstream culture game that James is playing in order to have an impact in what I'm doing. But I do need help with finding the right people, because this is the biggest challenge I have. I'm not going to take big money from people, so I can't do advertising. I'm not going to kiss the asses of conservatives and lie to people, so I'm not going to go on these shows. I'm not going to do what's required. I'm not going to be going to networking events and doing all this bullshit. I'm just not going to do it. I don't want to. But what I do have is a really committed audience that knows this material far better than James's audience can ever dare dream. You guys know what's up. You guys, the people who come to my weekly streams, the people who come to Socialism Saturday, the people who actually engage with the content, the people who subscribe to my Substack and you listen to the podcast and you do all this other stuff, you guys know more about what the left is doing than anyone on the internet. You know more than the pundits. You know more than the commentators. You know more than people who are writing books about Marxism, 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 Marxism. You guys know more than anyone. And what I need your help in now is I need your help in finding people that are like you. I need your help in sharing the content, getting it out there, sharing the videos, sharing the Substack articles, sharing the podcast. I need your help in terms of like you guys like keep pumping out those memes. I need your help in that everyone needs to be on Twitter, and I don't care if you like it or not. You need to be on there because that is where the conversation is, and that is where the influencers are, and that is where we can cause the most trouble. And we are driving James insane on Twitter. We are driving him insane, and we will continue to drive him insane. And this is now no holds fucking barred. I was starting to feel a little bit bad about this, just a little bit, because I know my energy is way more powerful than James is. And I know if I really go at someone, it feels like I fucking smack them right between the eyes. I want James to feel that every fucking day. I want James to be paranoid as shit that every time he tweets something, we're going to be in his replies. And eventually, once we are able to do this, I want us to start going to James's events. And I want us to go and be asking him questions about all this stuff on video to expose what's going on. I want him to be paranoid as fuck. I want him to think we're everywhere, because this is now war, motherfucker. I am no longer screwing around. James is not only lying to people. James is not only being the Pied Piper of the fucking Gnostic sex cult, dragging millions of parents right off the fucking cliff. James is also going on shows and discrediting my work and discrediting my character because he cannot have an intellectual conversation with me and trying to convince people not to listen to what I'm doing and not to watch the primary source videos, and that's not fucking cool. I never wanted war with James. I wanted to actually be cordial, and for fucking years, I held back everything I wanted to say about what he was doing and who he was associating with and his tactics and all the things I didn't agree with. I held back everything for years just to keep the peace, because I was like, there's no reason we need to be fighting. He can do whatever bullshit he wants. I don't care. Not my business. And I just focused on my shit. And apparently, in the meantime, as I was doing that, he was listening. I wasn't listening to him, but he was listening to me. And we've all seen the result of that. And God knows how long this has been going on. I truly have no idea because I was not paying attention to him. But if you want to fuck with me, then I will make sure you goddamn regret it. And the fact of the matter is that I am so much farther ahead than James. It's not even funny. And by the way, I've been doing this like almost 4 years. Almost like 3.5 years I've been doing this. Like really full time, like really fucking dug in. James has been doing this for like 10 years. How the fuck did I get so far ahead of James in 3 years on something that he's been working on for a decade? That tells you something. And I am a far better teacher than he can ever hope to be. That's why my audience knows so much more than his audience. And so we may be underdogs in this, but I don't feel the need to capitulate to him to anything. Not to one single thing. I haven't grifted my way to this. I have done 12 to 16 hours a day of listening to the left almost every single day for years. I teach hundreds of thousands of people a month. Through the Substacks, through the podcast, through all this stuff. I am completely 100% grassroots funded. That means I don't have any big donors behind me. That was a purposeful decision because I want to be able to say what I want to say and I want to be able to do what I want to do. And I want to create an underground fucking movement that is out there teaching this stuff, because the whole point of what I'm doing and why I focus so much on teaching and doing these streams is because I want all of you to be able to teach this as well as I can, because James can talk at a Turning Point event about, I need millions of people just like me out there doing this. But the fact of the matter is he doesn't actually want that, because the minute that James has millions of people doing what he's doing, which, by the way, the fact that James isn't actually teaching his audience anything is an indication that he doesn't actually want that. He wants to be the expert in the room. He wants to be the top dog. I don't care about that. What I want to do is create an army of people who know this shit as well as I do, that can go into their communities and teach other people, and giving you guys the materials to do that, drilling it into your head until you lose your mind, just like I have. But we need more people. We need more people here. We need more people learning. We need more people spreading the word about this. We need more people in James's replies. We need more people at James's events questioning him. Because right now, I'm sorry, and people might not like this because they're like, why can't we all just work together? I wasn't the one that destroyed the possibility of us working together. James was the one who destroyed the possibility of us working together. That was him. And right now, my perception of the situation is that our worst enemy isn't even the left. The left isn't even concerned with us. I have a fucking communist coming on my channel tomorrow. I had communists on my channel 2 weeks ago. I actually get positive feedback from communists. The communists that I talk to are like, yeah, your shit is right on, and you know what we're doing, and you understand us. Because guess what? They aren't afraid of me. They know I'm not going to do anything to stop them. They aren't afraid of conservatives. They know conservatives aren't doing shit to stop them. This is ironic, because we see this all the time. The number one enemy of the communists, the socialists, the real ones, are not the right. They don't give a fuck about the right. It's the neoliberals, the Democrats, the fucking democratic socialists. Most of them hate the democratic socialists. They hate the progressives. They hate the people that are supposed to be on their own side. Well, guess what? I feel the same way. I actually don't think my biggest problem right now is the left, because the left doesn't actually cause me any problems. My biggest fucking problem right now is that James Lindsay is lying to millions of fucking people and misleading them, so they get these crazy wonky ideas in their head that are not hinged into reality at all. Then they go out into the world and they read Gnosticism, and it makes all of us look fucking stupid. What James and Logan Lansing are doing makes all of us look fucking stupid. And it also requires us to unteach the people who James got to first, because he's got the massive money bags in his back pocket, and I don't. And he's got the MILFs in his back pocket, and he's got Turning Point in his back pocket. Is it any coincidence that James is sucking the dick of Conservative Inc.? Does anyone find that to be coincidental, that James is sucking the cock of Conservative Inc. while at the same time quoting the Bible in a church as though he's not an atheist? That is the biggest problem right now. The biggest problem between us and actually being able to make an impact in the culture war, which I hate that fucking term. Let's illustrate the cultural revolution that the left is eliciting in this country. The biggest challenge that we have is that the right is fucking lying to people. The right is trotting out the Gnostics. The Gnostics are your biggest enemy. It's the Gnostics. Pinky swear, trust us, bro. That is our biggest problem. That is the thing we need to confront directly. And in order to do that, we need more people over here actually looking at the content, actually listening to the content. The content that we're going to listen to today, by the way, James has never even heard of the content we're going to listen to today, because James has never bothered to listen to the actual queer Marxists that he claims to be teaching people about. But the problem that James does not understand is that things like the Mary Nardini gang, the queer anarchist literature, the stuff that started popping up in the 2000s, this is more influential to where queer Marxist activists are today than Marx or Mao or Marcuse. Now, I'm not suggesting that Marx and Mao and Marcuse, with a particular emphasis on Marx because they talk about Marx more than all of them, I'm not suggesting that they were not influential. However, we're starting to develop this little hypothesis. Hang on, that's the song. By the way, guys, if you want to download the song in the intro, it is actually available on Spotify and Apple Music. If you want to listen to the Gnostic Sex Cult song, there you go. Those are your links to Spotify and Apple. You can get it there. But we're starting to develop this hypothesis called gain-of-function Marxism, which is essentially, and you can find this article over on my Substack. It is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Essentially, the idea is this, for people who haven't heard me say this before. And I'll put the link to the Substack in the little banner. It's also in the description below. The idea is this. If you remember the movie Contagion, and this is just the best analogy that I have. If you remember the movie Contagion, there was a scene in Contagion that explained how the worldwide plague started. And it started by a bat flying from the forest into a barn. The bat brought a banana into the barn. It was eating the banana. The bat dropped the banana. The pig in the barn ate the banana. Then the pig was picked up and brought to a restaurant where it was slaughtered and served to customers. And that was the start of the worldwide plague in the movie Contagion. And you can see the scene in the Substack if you want. This is the best analogy I've found to describe this. This is what gain-of-function Marxism is. That pig in the barn represents the foundational philosophical literature. So your Marx, your Mao, your Marcuse, whatever, the old dead philosophers, we're going to call them. I'm not saying that stuff's not important. I think that stuff is important. However, at some point, when it comes to today's far left activists, the ones who are actually doing things in the real world, the ones who are pushing critical race theory in schools, the ones who are pushing gender ideology in schools, the ones who are doing activism against the trans legislation that's preventing surgery on minors, the ones who are attacking parental rights, the ones who are doing the college protests, the outside agitators that are doing the college protests, who are not funded by George Soros, by the way, and James can eat a dick on that too. He's lying about that, just like Alex Jones is lying about that. The New York Post is lying about that. They're not funded by Soros. They're almost entirely self-funded. And I've covered that other areas, so I'm not going to dig in deep now. My point is that the people doing every crazy thing in the world today, the abolish the police, defund the police, environmental justice, everything, they are not coming directly from the foundational philosophy of the dead people. There was a mutated strand, and that mutation is queer anarchist subculture. And that mutation started happening in the 2000s. Do you know what else happened in the 2000s? The kids who are doing the college protests today were born. The kids who are doing the college protests today were in school. The kids who are doing the college protests today were being indoctrinated into this ideology at a young age. Happened at the same goddamn time. So you have the foundational Marxist, communist, like philosophers, fine. But at some point, the things that are becoming most influential to the real activists in the real world was the queer anarchist subculture that mutated what was going on. We are not dealing with pure Marxism. We are dealing with a mutated strand of Marxism. That is what we see show up in all of the trainings we watch on Socialism Saturday. It is the same language. And the more I listen to and dig into this queer anarchist subculture, which, by the way, again, James doesn't even know this exists because James doesn't listen to people in the real fucking world. The more I dig into this, the more I am absolutely positive. Every single thing. It is the same language. It is the same language we hear every time we do a deep dive into the far left. It is the same language we hear on Socialism Saturday. It is the same language that we hear the activists say over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. We are not dealing with pure Marxism. We are dealing with gain of function Marxism, and this is the problem. If you try to apply, if you do not understand your enemy, you can never defeat them. And James Lindsay can read as much Marx and Hegel and Marcuse and Derrida and Foucault and all the other fucking things. He can read as much of that as he wants. Until he starts getting into the queer anarchist literature and until he starts listening to people in the real world, he does not understand. This is why James and Logan Lansing have written a book about a Gnostic fucking sex cult that is completely unhinged from reality, because all they've done is cherry pick the academic philosophy that is unhinged from what queer activists are saying and doing in the real world. This is why this has happened. And he didn't check his own confirmation bias, and he blocked anyone who tried to tell him, and he refused to look at primary source evidence, even though I was feeding it to him for literally fucking years in his DMs, feeding him the primary source evidence that he refused to fucking look at. Because James was concerned about politics and big money donors and kissing the asses of Moms for Liberty and sucking the cock of Conservative Inc. And that was what he was really concerned with. While we were actually listening to this shit in the real world to figure out and reverse engineer all of the crazy practical shit that we're seeing from the real world activists. And that is this. And that is what we are listening to today. That is what we are listening to today with the Mary Nardini gang. And we've been listening to the Mary Nardini gang a little bit. This is not the first Mary Nardini gang thing we're listening to, but this is something that we have to listen to because I think that right now this is one of the most influential things because we see the phrase "be gay, do crime" pop up all over the place. It's funny. Ariel Scarcella knew about this phrase before James Lindsay did. Isn't that funny? You want to know why? Because Ariel wasn't reading academic literature. She was listening to the real world queer activists who were saying, "be gay, do crime." This is where this is coming from. This is where this is coming from. So we're going to listen to this today, guys. And James, you can have all the feelings you want, bro. I don't really care. I don't really care. The Borisenko game, be gay, not queer. I'm not going to tell people to be gay. I'm not gay. I mean, if you are gay, that's fine. I'm not going to judge or nothing. Anyway, guys, that is what we're going to listen to today. Couple other things before we get started. Programming note. I've actually got a couple interviews over the next couple days. I'm really excited about this. Tomorrow, we are welcoming Noah on the channel. You guys might remember Noah from us watching Midwestern Marx. And we've watched Noah teach Marxism. And Noah and I actually had a really cordial Twitter conversation where Noah doesn't like these queer anarchists. Noah's a Bolshevik. Isn't it funny? The Bolsheviks have no problem talking to me. The Revolutionary Communists of America had no problem coming on and talking to me because they're like old school Bolsheviks. And the Revolutionary Communists of America told me before we went on the air, they were like, queer Marxism isn't real Marxism. Because they're old school Bolsheviks. Noah is an old school Bolshevik. He's a communist. He teaches communism. He loves communism. That's his thing. But he's going to come on the channel for a chat tomorrow, and we're going to welcome him, and we're going to be nice, and we're going to be cordial, and we're not going to harangue him or anything. Maybe we can even convince Noah to unblock people that he's blocked in his chat that come from my audience. Maybe we can start cordial relations with the communist. Maybe if we're really talented, we can start a war between the Bolsheviks and the queer Marxists because the Bolsheviks haven't quite figured out yet that the queer Marxists are going to co-opt their movement. Noah's also, I think, part of the Communist Party USA thing, which isn't like a really effective party. So I'm not really worried about them at all. But anyway, we're doing that. And then on Thursday, we're doing something a little bit different. just to piss off the Christians, Adam Green is back. And we like Adam Green because he looks like a Viking. And he's also very smart. And Adam Green is going to come and talk to us about why Jesus wasn't real. And so Adam Green is this really nice guy who has this theory that, and I think I've actually kind of bought into this. I really am. His ideas are that the Jews created the myth of Jesus and Christianity in order to control non-Jews and to get them worshiping a Jewish God. And I'm like, and if you listen to him and he's digging into it, it's like, yo, he actually might be right about that. But I'm actually not fully bought into this idea that there wasn't some sort of historical Jesus. I actually think my perspective on it is I do think there was a historical person. Now, I do not believe that the Jesus depicted in the Bible was that person. But I also believe like it's easier to create a myth if you have a kernel of truth to it. And so he apparently has a whole PowerPoint presentation that he's going to take us through. And so he's going to talk to us about his ideas about why Jesus wasn't real and just entirely created in order to control people. And I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation. And if nothing else, he's really handsome, so you guys will have something to look at. So that'll be fun. So we're going to welcome him back on Thursday, and I'm really looking forward to that. And so I hope you guys are too. Again, this is not the normal type of content that I do, but I do think it's important to take breaks. I also just find it interesting. And sometimes I like to do streams that are about me, okay? And things that I find interesting. So we're going to do that on Thursday. And then, of course, tonight we do have Nothing Remotely Controversial with Joshua. And that's going to be news and psychics. And if you don't like psychics, you don't have to come. If you think the tarot cards are the devil, you don't have to come. But this is where we blow off steam. It's going to be great. And so we'll be doing that at 9:30 tonight. All right. If you want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business, please head over to the Substack, which is Carlin, KAROIN.substack.com, and sign up for a membership. $8 a month, $80 a year. I've got a couple new podcasts up on the Substack. Do you guys know I have 2 podcasts on the Substack? I have my free podcast, which is the Actively Unwoke podcast, which you can find here. And every time I post something in the Actively Unwoke podcast, it's going to have the TV with the eye. And this is free. You can find it on iTunes and you can find it on Spotify and probably other places as well. So you can sync that up there. And I did a whole rant yesterday about how proof that queer theory is not a sex cult and why James Lindsay is a fucking lunatic. Anyway, you guys, if you're watching my streams, have heard me say that a million times, but not everyone who listens to my podcast watches my streams, okay? So I wanted to put that content up for them as well. I play a bunch of clips in that one from the Mary Nardini gang, from queer Marxist activists that we've actually listened to on the channel. So you can hear, and from Sophie, of course, we can't forget Sophie. So you can actually hear the real queer Marxists say things like, queer was evolved as an insurgency against private property, which is what we heard Sophie say on Saturday. You can hear the Mary Nardini gang talk about how queer liberation means the annihilation of capitalism. And none of that aligns with queer being a Gnostic sex cult. I'll tell you that. That's the Actively Unwoke podcast. And then I have another podcast called The Inner Circle. Now, the Inner Circle podcast is a little eclectic. This is kind of this is a mishmash of content that I'm doing in terms of like, I'm trying to give you guys access to kind of like my thoughts behind the scenes of like just being on like in this thing and what it's like. I also do just random shit. Like I read the Unabomber manifesto for this podcast. So if you guys have never listened to the Unabomber manifesto, you can actually find that on the podcast if you want to listen to that, which I think everyone should listen to. And I'm starting to do this thing where I'm breaking down queer anarchist literature and reading the full thing and explaining it on the podcast. And I've got my first episode up. I posted this the other night about queer social anarchism. And it really is fascinating, guys. You guys are going to love this stuff. People have been asking me to do more podcast content, so I did a full breakdown on that. Now, this is a subscriber-only podcast. So what it is you're going to get a free preview, but the meat of the podcast is going to be behind the paywall. So in order to access the link to that, it's $8 a month, $80 a year. You can access the link to put it in your iTunes or your Spotify or whatever, the premium link, so you get direct access. And wherever you listen to your podcast, you can access that on the Substack. And I'm going to be doing a bunch more of those because the queer anarchist stuff is what I want to make sure that we have like an archive of this stuff that we can refer back to. Yes, if you are subscribed to carlin.substack.com, that is your subscription to the Inner Circle podcast. So that's like a supporter perk. You also get other supporter perks like 2 Zoom calls a week, including one tomorrow at noon with me. You get access to the supporter Discord. You get access to Spy Stream, lots of other cool stuff as well. And of course, I can't do it without you guys. You guys are the ones that keep me in business because unlike James Lindsay, I don't have big money bags funding the work I'm doing in exchange for taking political positions that I may or may not agree with. Anyway, I appreciate the support, guys. We're going to create our own little subculture over here. And James can whine about it all he wants on his Twitter, and I don't really care. Anyway, let's get into the Mary Nardini gang. We're going to be listening to this. This is called Be Gay, Do Crime. And we're going to be talking about it. Oh, we're going to be watching Mad Max Fury Road for movie night this week. I'm really excited by it. This was my choice. I begged Jennifer. I said, please, Jennifer, it is the greatest Mad Max movie of all time. And Jennifer, because she gives me my way sometimes, said, okay, Carlin, we can watch Mad Max Fury Road. It's fine. So that's going to be on Sunday in the supporter Discord. And it's going to be lit. It's going to be awesome. If you've never seen that movie, it's an awesome movie. It's so effing good. Anyway, let's dig into this. Everyone, please make sure you mount the like button for me. Everyone, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you are not already. Let's listen to some queer anarchist subculture literature.
2019. Read by Naomi Kirschultz, June 22nd, 2022. 10 years ago, we were seized by a frenzied spirit and in a trance-like state received a set of 10 weapons for a war we were only just finding the words to describe. We were a cabal of teenage runaways, ne'er-do-wells, what Gennett called criminal children, coming ex nihilo from and with nothing but each other. We experienced the whole social order as inimical to freedom, desire, and our preferred relations, but suspected we were not alone in our visceral hatred for this world. So we encoded these tools, visions of excess and otherness, into a slim zine and sent it to the ends of the earth. For a decade we followed it across borders linguistic and militarized to find the comrades, in a sense inalienable from, as Chris Chitty argued, the world's originary homoerotic implications. The words originary homoerotic implications, who received this same transmission, queer insurrection. During that time, we stole away on trains with forged documents, on fraudulent flights, and in the cars of strangers who picked us up en route to one encounter after another. We found each other in forest encampments, communes at the center of cities, at blockades against the storm called progress, and in revelry within the hollowed-out shells of deindustrialization. We fought enemies minute and gargantuan on streets and in alleyways. We were there when cities were burned, buildings occupied, boutiques looted, ports blockaded, wannabe bashers humiliated, Nazis punched. We delivered an empty coffin to the doorsteps of a killer cop, threw fire into the home of a John who killed a trans woman, and more through bank windows in the name of those imprisoned for refusing a similar fate. We instigated the wildest queer riots in a generation, outside the gates of summits of the global elite, and again when an apologist for fascism emerged as a dangerous faggot, quote unquote, in the hollowed halls of the intelligentsia. We found our way into reading groups and meetings, waited for the men to stop speaking, and spoke only to be misunderstood. Misunderstood except by our friends, for whom we stockpiled pepper spray and stun guns because we wanted them alive, turned tricks to pay bail because we wanted them free, walked out of grocery stores because we wanted them fed, scammed universities to bring them to our cities, sold our time at strategic institutions so we could give them everything, got really good at showing specific forms of care. So good that we found better hustles, waited with cigarettes and blankets outside the jails because we hated the idea of them in there alone, prepared for attacks like we would for a night with lovers, dedicated books to each other and our beloved dead because those words mean nothing outside of the relationships which give them traction. We swore oaths to keep each other's secrets and keep each other alive, to hold fiercely to that brilliant intimacy we shared in moments of which we can never speak, to never speak our names either, to always speak sideways in handwritten letters on the sides of buildings, delivered by hand between traveling friends, or mailed innocuously under the eyes of guards and censors.
Human centipede, you know what we got to do? We should start like trying to figure out, and I have a tool that can help us do this. We should start trying to figure out who exactly is in the Mary Nardini gang, because remember, we listened to that like queer violence thing last week, and we're pretty sure that queer violence thing was also written by someone who was in the Mary Nardini gang. And it seems to like all be like around Milwaukee. I mean, they were in Milwaukee, right? And so we can look at the location of where some of this stuff was produced and kind of get an idea of where it came from. And I think that we can listen to the writing and the language and kind of get a good idea if we can find other stuff that was produced in Milwaukee around this time that's attributed to like specific people. It might just be like, I'm not saying we should go out of our way to do this or anything, but I'm saying like if we can find the stuff that was produced in Milwaukee, like for the past, like 20, 25 years or so, like in that time span, we might be able to make some interesting connections between them. And I just think if it's easy to do it, we should think about doing it.
In the long tradition of queer criminality, we've expropriated literally everything we could. We wrote anthems and journals of exegesis, tended archives and prison distros, scammed pages by the thousands. We filled parcels with stolen fineries and sent them with love notes to distant friends. We determined each other deserving of the 10,000 things.
Well, this is an interesting question from T-Bone Man. Like, so is this like, I'm going to turn my mic down a little bit because I think my mic is way too loud for the actual content. So I'm going to turn my mic down a little bit, and that way everyone can turn their volume up if they need to. So this is like a retelling of some of the things the gang has accomplished. The ignorant side of me feels like this is a fever dream. I don't necessarily think it is. I don't necessarily think this is like directly, here are things we've done. I think it might be, but my suspicion, and maybe we'll find out a little bit more about this as we make our way through it, is it's more like the fantasy. It's how this is what conservatives don't know how to do, right? Conservatives don't know how to create art as a form of creating like a vision or something that can, pull on the emotional heartstrings or things like that. So it might be hard for like people who don't have that in them to like understand what this is. It's more of like a fingerprint. It captures like the mood of this particular group. It might not be like a direct like, translation between they wrote this and that means this happened in the real world. People write stories, people write poems, people write art, they write essays, they pontificate, and that's kind of the style that this is written in. It's more of like an essay, I mean, but we don't even know if it's an embellishment of past events. It might just be, they might be using the events as an allegory for how they see the world. Remember, guys, these are like, queer anarchists are going to be educated. Queer anarchists have gone to college. Queer anarchists have studied literature. They've studied philosophy. They've studied poetry. They've read some of the great works. They've had to discuss and dissect these things. So, and this is where conservatives lose out because they shit on college and like school so much. It's like there are actually things that you can learn in college that are actually useful, and storytelling and allegory and being able to analyze this stuff and understand that not everything is just like black and white and cut and dry and like all this stuff. It's like, this is something you learn when you take an English literature class in college. That's what this feels like to me. This feels like an essay written for an English literature class in college.
We've fumbled through learning 1,000 techniques of healing our broken bodies and spirits. We've mastered the art of the dérivé, wandering by instinct alone through the darkened streets of the varied metropoles, seeking some ineffability that we still can't name. We've experimented with every permutation of drugs and hormones to find the alchemy that opens us up to the world.
That's true.
We developed addictions chasing highs between one uprising and the next.
Do-it-yourself hormones is a very big thing in this community. We've seen Jules Gill-Peterson lecture about that. Sophie Lewis was actually just talking about that in the lecture we watched the other day. I read something, that queer anarchist thing that I read for the Inner Circle podcast had a whole fucking paragraph talking about, actually, let me show you guys this. So for the Inner Circle podcast, hang on. I put some of the best snippets of the essay that I read in the actual notes for the episode. Can you actually see that on this? I wonder if I have to be logged in to see it. No, they are in here. Oh, wait, no, not that one. Not that one. Wrong podcast. Wrong one. This one. This is what I'm looking for. Can I see my notes in this, or do I need to look in my browser where I'm logged in? I have to look in my browser where I'm logged in. Okay, hang on. Hang on. Sorry. I'm not actually logged into the website on this browser. I'll get in another one. But this is important, and you guys are going to like it, and it relates to what we just saw. Hang on. This one. So in the breakdown, I've got the notes here that are basically just like highlighted portions of like the best parts of this essay. Check this out. This was towards the end of this essay in this queer social anarchism one that I read for the podcast. With that being said, the service that connects beyond the list of importance is access to human replacement therapy outside of the current market in preparation for and in response to the repression of trans healthcare. This was written in 2022. It is a proven fact that one of the cornerstones of the survival of the trans community is access to hormones. With the shadow of state repression of the drugs looming over our community, we need to start preparing for when, not if, the state starts to hammer down on all legal forms for all trans people to have affirming health care. The foundation for an underground trans healthcare network needs to be built now. This was 2 years ago. In order to be most effective when current conditions become drastically untenable. Of course, when dealing with this possibility, you are going to have to work within very precarious legal grounds. In order to build and maintain this kind of service effectively, a much tighter security culture is going to have to be put in place to keep you and the people you're helping safe. For more detailed context on security culture, blah, 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 blah. My point is this. DIY hormones may very well be the same as DIY moonshine, MacB. I do appreciate that. My point here is this, that in the queer anarchist literature, they're flat out telling us that they're preparing for the conservatives to outlaw all trans hormones. And they're already 2 years ago starting to create underground networks where people can get access to these hormones. And in multiple queer anarchist things we've watched, they've talked about DIY hormones. I actually have on the Substack, I have, hang on, I will show you guys this. Hang on. Hormones. I covered this last year. Should have known then. On August 11th, 2023, Johns Hopkins professor encourages trans students to use do-it-yourself hormones. Jules Gill-Peterson is a queer anarchist. Jules Gill-Peterson was actually mentioned by Sophie Lewis on Socialism Saturday of all the queer anarcho-communists. Jules Gill-Peterson actually also spoke at the Socialism Conference. Anyway, so this is actually a thing, is what I'm saying. Yes, we have also heard queer Marxists, Rottweiler's right about this. We've also heard queer Marxists talk about androgen testosterone as a party drug. That they like take their tea before they go to the raves.
And later helped one another find other ways. We experimented badly with dozens of models for new relations, but continued even at our worst, because we learned the hard way that disposability isn't an option. Eventually, aching flesh and the plant kingdoms revealed their secret languages. We learned love languages too, the inimitable joy of gifts and quiet declarations and eternities of now time spent in affinity and in affection. Now time. A hard-won concept we only learned by way of a sequence of loss. We've hurt each other and had to learn to pick up the pieces of shattered relations. We've been betrayed too, but are disinclined to spill much ink on sellouts and turncoats. We've run away and we've returned humbled. Our friends and lovers have been taken from us, locked in cages, suicided by cops, burned up in dance parties at the margins of gentrifying cities. We know that our time with each other is fleeting, so we fight for every moment of interdependence and complicity. This spring, along with the flowers, an image bloomed within some small nodes of the World Wide Web. A skeleton dressed as a pirate, bearing a torch named Anarchy, with communes emblazoned upon her chest, round bombs around her hat, and free love on a pin.
So, anarcho-communists.
A sword hangs from her belt, and she bears a scroll proclaiming, "Be gay! Do crime!" The skeleton is frenzied. At the bottom of the page run the lines, "Many blame queers for the decline of this society, but we take pride in this. Some believe that we intend to shred to bits this civilization and its moral fabric, and they couldn't be more accurate.
Yo!
We are often described as depraved."
Why are queer anarchists inclined to tear down society? Pop quiz for the chat. Why is it the explicit stated goal of queer anarchists to tear down society? Because they're gay and trans? Is that what it is? Are they tearing down society? Because is gay marriage responsible for all this? Is the conservatives would have us believe? Is the conservative grifters would have us believe? Why are queer anarchists inclined to tear down society? Because tearing down society tears down capitalism. Yeah, but give me a little bit more than that. Don't just say capitalism and call it a day. We're not going to be lazy. Come on. To destroy the norm. Because gender upholds family and capitalism. Well, that's not directly answering the question I'm asking, Bod. That's just like taking my talking points. Come on, give me more. Give me more. Society is an oppressive hierarchy. Ooh, I like where this is going. What else? What else? The goal of queer is to disrupt normativity. Normativity, of course, being capitalism. Specifically, I mean, the family's part of this. But guys, they haven't mentioned the family yet. They haven't mentioned the family at all. So they're just talking about tearing down society right now. They're not mentioning, guys, hang on. We've had this talk before. Please do not just regurgitate my talking points without thinking about the question that I'm actually asking. So just because we're watching queer Marxism, the answer is not always the gender binary and the nuclear family. That's not always going to be the answer. I want to make sure that everyone can adapt the argument to the question being asked, not just like spouting like gender binary, nuclear family, gender binary, nuclear family. We've got to get better than that, okay? Society is normative, therefore they have to tear down society. That seems to be the best we're getting right now. To be free of societal constraints. Okay. I mean, of course, the ultimate goal is to abolish capitalism. All right, well, let's keep going. Let's see what else they give us.
Decadent and revolting, but oh, they ain't seen nothing yet.
They ain't seen nothing yet.
Here, at the foundation of the image, we found words which rang familiar. After a slight slippage in time, we remembered the feeling of those words and having written them. They were initially published as a communique issued by a criminal queer association in an underground periodical published by anarchists in Milwaukee called Total Destroy. Both the gang form known as Bash Bat
Jason on Twitter, you guys know Jason from the chat. Jason on Twitter just tweeted, James Lindsay is a pussy and an embarrassment to atheism. Oh, God. Oh, James just shouldn't have fucked with me, I swear to God.
And this publication were expressions of a milieu based in River West, a discreet and at times not so discreet anarchist neighborhood since the end of World War II. After the war, the nascent bohemian anarchist subculture that had been developing in the war resistor camps among writers and art freaks and some Christians splintered in a diaspora that bore the newly freed mystics to New York and San Francisco. A small enclave ended up in River West and stayed, joining the Gallianist anarchist lineage rooted in the city. The neighborhood
Gallianist?
remained a
What
constant
is
site
that?
of struggle, sometimes armed with the forces of law and order. In the neighborhood, one can find a certain crossroads at which a variety of struggles have intersected. Queer struggles, struggles against racism and fascism, against the police, for the liberation of foodways, along with a dense layering of underground cultures. Distinct anarchist currents consistently cohabitated that neighborhood, debating positions and ways. Around the time of the Nardini gang communiques, insurrectionaries, queers, race traders, and eco-extremists came together under the roof of an anarchist space.
What does race traders mean in this
particular
context?
info
Do
shop,
we
the
think?
Cream City Collectives, was one of the many anarchist spaces that had stood at that exact intersection going back decades.
Hang on.
This is the place where we...
Did he say Cream City Collectives?
This particular info shop, the Cream City Collectives, was one of the many...
Cream City Collectives. Hang on one second. Is that an actual thing? Cream City Collectives. Hang on. Stand by. Something's loading. Trying to load. Look at this. Look at this. You would not think... You wouldn't look at this and think anarchist, would you? Doesn't it look very, dare I say, capitalist? Cream City Collective, this back in 2012. That seems to be that hasn't been updated in a long ass time. Oh, they found a new place. Look at this. They've got craft fairs. They've got all sorts of stuff going on. Isn't it funny? None of this stuff looks anarchist, does it? No, but Rottweiler, they were saying race trader as in someone working with them, not someone working against them. So maybe there was white people who were being socialist. I don't know. Anyway. Guys, why are people talking about cheese? Nothing that we just looked at had anything to do with cheese. All right, people need to hang on, pause. Yeah, that's an example of social insertion for real, for real. Guys, literally nothing that I showed you guys. I know it had the term cream in the title, so it might have been confusing, but none of what we just looked at had anything to do with cheese at all. And I've been seeing this lately, and I don't know if it's just an energy thing or an astrology thing, but I've seen a lot of people making shit up in the chat lately. Socialism Saturday was difficult at best to get through because people were constantly making shit up that had no basis in reality the whole time. That needs to stop. I don't know how much more I can be. That needs to stop. If you're going to be here and you're going to be a serious part of this community, I do not want to see you making shit up for which there is no evidence of in the chat. I don't want to see it. And if I have to keep calling it out, eventually I'm just going to ban you, because if you keep coming here and you keep making shit up, then I'm going to assume that you're not serious about this. I know we want more people here. I know we want more people engaging, but what I will not have is people making shit up that is not grounded in reality, because James Lindsay is an example of this. If you get too many people in your audience that are just making shit up that are not grounded in reality, eventually that takes over your entire community, and I will not have it.
Anarchist spaces that had stood at that exact intersection going back decades. This is the place where we found ourselves when, a few months after the initial publication of Toward the Queerest Insurrection, emissaries from the future spoke through fire set across the seas. An insurrection broke out, not in Milwaukee, but in Greece. Civilization died within the bounds of the nation-state mythologized as the epicenter of its birth. The police executed a teenage anarchist named Alexis Grigoropoulos in another long-term anarchist neighborhood, Exarchia, X out of Archaea, rulership. Exarchia is a place where anarchy, the beautiful idea, had never gone quiet, and so when a cop murdered a youth, an encounter so devastatingly routine in the US, there at the crossroads, which is now Alexis's hero shrine, the whole world caught fire. The insurrection had come. The fires that burned there for 17 nights sent embers to the far corners of the world, and these found places where the flame could catch. And that flame caught in our obscure neighborhood, wrapped in rivers, and it changed everything for us. Those 17 days opened up a narrow gate such as Walter Benjamin proposed existed in each moment. That gate opened up in the bizarre, internationalist mycelial web woven by anarchists across the globe. All throughout the anarchist galaxy, the Messiah came. We bore witness. We saw the river flow backwards. We saw the event, the open. The fires lit in Greece, spread across the globe as metropoles and suburbs and unceded territories all throughout the world, in a non-linear, expanding and evolving polyvalent front, a border between an old world decaying and a new one emerging. For many, the realization was brought by disaster or insurgency in response to the hidden daily disaster of policing. In the US, the idea spread through the infrastructure of the various nodes created by the insurrectionary anarchists of the preceding decade. The first real encounter with the fire itself on this continent occurred in the opening days of 2009, when the city of Oakland burned in response to the police murder of Oscar Grant. By way of solidarity actions and the stories of travelers, anarchists who were present for that opening of the door on the west coast of this accursed nation spread word that the insurrection had come and everyone should act accordingly. Bash Back was one of the many currents which took that message to heart.
Back, we were listening to that last
week. In the context of the network's emergent praxis, a proposal surfaced which insisted on a new form of life: criminal, queer, and anarchist. In short,
pop quiz, what is Bashback? I know at least one person in the chat knows what it is, but I don't know that more than one. What is Bashback? See, no one can just yell capitalism for this. What is Bashback? Yup, like Antifa, but give me more. A decentralized network of queer anarchist cells. Give me more. What did the decentralized network of queer anarchist cells do? Bash back. B-A-C-K. Bash back. Militant gays. Queers fighting queer bashers. A group where they fight back against stuff. Well, yeah, that's an eloquent way to put it, Pot. Retaliation against police brutality. Well, yeah. attacking capitalism and providing mutual aid. Mutual aid is a socialist thing. Yeah, queer groups that fight neo-Nazis. Okay, let's just keep going.
Devotion to the new world emerging, indifference to the social order dying, and war with those who would defend its memory or attempt to reanimate its corpse. We realize that time and identity are fictions, but that we are bound to our ancestors and can only heal from the violences by addressing generations of trauma.
Autumn, you cheated?
We realize that the moment was always imminent and that we simply needed to shift perspectives to access.
That's okay. Sometimes it's okay to cheat. Bashback was noticeably influenced by the anarchist movement and radical queer groups such as ACT UP, and took inspiration from Stonewall and San Francisco's White Night riots. Bashback was a network of queer insurrectionary anarchist cells active in the United States between 2007 and 2011.
Anarchy had always been there beneath the paving stones, and we saw it and were forever changed, and now had to live accordingly, not in the time that remains, but in the time after. The distribution of the anonymous text, Desert, through Green Anarchist nodes put forward the proposal that the world would not end in one single gesture of revolution or collapse, but would die as a patchwork, and from that humus would rise new worlds, plural. In the clash with the alt-right, we are encountering another of those worlds. Diane Di Prima said it best in her revolutionary letters, quote, "And it seems to me the struggle has to be waged on a number of different..."
You know what we need to do? We need to make some zines or some propaganda just titled like anti-communist read this or anti-Marxist read this or something to that effect, because like they're doing stuff like having a zine titled queers read this is actually fucking brilliant. It's like it couldn't be more direct. If you are queer, you need to read this. We need to create some sort of like materials or propaganda that's like explicitly directed at like, you know, do you hate communists? Do you hate socialists? Do you like you need to read this and get it out into the real world. And it could be something as like I've thought about this too in terms of like the Revolutionary Communists of America. The Revolutionary Communists of America have that Karl Marx sticker where it's like Karl Marx pointing at you and it says, "Are you a communist?" And all it has on it is a QR code, and that's it. It's just the "Are you a communist?" Karl Marx pointing at you and the QR code, and they plaster that shit all over college campuses. And then people go up and they scan the QR code and they get the form and they fill out the form for more information. And that's how the Revolutionary Communists of America recruit. Like, we need to do the same thing. Like, are you an anti-Marxist? Are you an anti-communist? Like, maybe with Karl Marx with like a big fucking X through it or something like that. I love that. We actually had this idea several years ago, Human Centipede. We were actually talking about doing this a while ago. A pamphlet saying your teachers are lying to you. I fucking love that. Post that on school, post that like around high schools. Like, what if we did a campaign where we did some sort of thing where like your teachers are lying to you and posted that around high schools, like public high schools, like on signposts and street posts and stuff like that. And we start to create some sort of like mailing list just for like people like that, like that are like, you know, getting that type of propaganda. Or even on colleges, your professors are lying to you. Be a fun campaign.
Levels. They have computers to cast the I Ching for them, but we have Yarostocks and the stars. It is a battle of energies, of force fields, what the newspapers call a battle of ideas. End quote. Since the moment when the Bashback network encountered the clash of the new world breaking into existence, We've experimented in ways to live in this new world with which we are bound up in some divine act of co-creation. We, and these words, have gone to the corners of the world, announcing, as the frenzied skeleton does above, our magic.
I don't know, Autumn. I don't know. How about we say, build your own fucking business so you can buy a Lexus?
Be gay. Do crime. This development of means of living and fighting in this new world has looked different for each of us. We have suffered unimaginable losses and learned 1,000 ways of healing. We studied to become specialized practitioners of these varied modalities. We built networks of care to support each other through betrayals, repression, and the death of our friends. We learned to care for each other's wounds and cover each other's rents.
Thank you, Nick, for the member chat and for being a member of the channel for 19 months. I really do appreciate it. Bashback was a group of queers who targeted and went after mainstream normal days who just wanted to be accepted. I think you meant mainstream normal gays who just wanted to be accepted as normal in society. Where'd you get that definition? Because I'm not entirely convinced that Bashback was about going after normal gays. Like homonormativity. I mean, they didn't like homonormativity, but I'm not convinced that that's what. So where did that definition come from, I guess, is my question. But I do appreciate it.
Many of us work with spirits and ancestors. Some people got into publishing. Some moved to the wilds and are learning its mysteries. We have abolitionist fanatics. We have anti-fascist researchers who've committed their lives to documenting the movement of
Anti-fascist
our
means
enemy.
anti-capitalist.
We've learned to fight, to attack, to hold space afterwards. We have been at every uprising in the last decade and have shared understandings by way of them. Those of us who continued the path of sex work are now struggling against the state's deployment of new, repressive and cybernetic techniques. Some people have gone entirely underground. Some have learned the sacred methods of altering the body. As we speak, people are studying the stars to find their way. Some mess.
Hang on. The sacred methods of altering the body. Did you guys catch that? That phrasing was just interesting. The sacred methods of altering the body.
Repressive and cybernetic techniques. Some people have gone entirely underground. Some have learned the sacred methods of altering the body.
The sacred methods of altering the body. The reason I bring that up is that in the book Transgender Marxism, which was written and edited by queer anarchists, in the introduction to that book, I mentioned this several times because I can't get past the introduction to that book. I really do need to read that book at some point. But in the introduction to Transgender Marxism, they talk about how having like top surgery is like the highest, like top and bottom surgery, really, but like having surgery on your body to like permanently transition your gender is the highest commitment that you can make to the political ideology of queer, because it's like a permanent change that you can't go back. The sacred methods of altering the body. Isn't that interesting that they don't consider the body just as it, like queer Marxists, and especially like the fat studies people and like the crip people and all that, they want you to believe that like, you know, like everyone should just love their body and like it's like, you know, it is what it is. And but they don't consider the body to be sacred. They consider they consider the methods of altering the body to be sacred.
As we speak, people are studying the stars to find their way. Some messengers are still wandering. Many have stayed put and are now deepening their animistic relationship to place, and yes, in the cities too. We have among us practitioners of sadomasochism, queer performance, Afrofuturism, chaos magic,
BDSM, they're
public
obsessed
health,
with it.
herbalism, diasporic traditions, long-form prisoner correspondence, poetry.
Oh,
This
is that
monopoly could be looked
is that what Nick was talking about with the Hodge twins? That's exciting. Bashback wasn't a violent attack on normie gays. They felt the mainstream movement focused on assimilation into heteronormativity society, and they advocated for queer liberation instead by using illegal tactics. Thank you.
That as a set of tactical discussions, but this view must be turned on its head. These are not methods to bring about the new world. These are ways of living that assume its imminent being. We have continued from the proposal published 10 years ago in Criminal Intimacy that our relationships are our strength and that those relationships were forged in the moments we found each other while the doors stood open. Strategy does not precede the moment but emerges in its aftermath. Insurrection is the Messiah and it has already come. The question since has been how to proceed. It is no surprise that anarchists who turn towards mysticism, such as Freddie Perlman, Ursula Le Guin, or Diane di Prima, at some point come to study the Tao, the way. We proceeded despite the end of the world, seeking joy everywhere that we could. Our communiques took the ruins.
James Lindsay is like cheering right now. He's like, proof of the Gnostic sex cult. There were anarchists that studied mysticism. That's proof of a Gnostic sex cult.
For granted, and we insisted upon dancing amid them. Sex parties, dance parties, street parties, reading parties. Partying emerged as a central form in that frenzied moment. Our later inquiries into the sacred nature of the revel, into the bacchanals and the nighttime sabbats, revealed an intrinsic relationship between partying and the world-making arts. In our parties, we opened onto connection with each other, onto other realms and other gestures. The realization of the insurrectionary dimension of the party proved dangerous precisely for its potential to be reified as the party of insurrection. By way of the circulation of a small blue book, some who reveled in flames alongside us became fixated on the proposed reemergence of the party form, the very structure of synthesis that had dominated the revolutionary imaginations of lost generations. Where we came to understand the party as spiritual, they desired a political party. Where we sought forms of connection, they submitted to an apparatus based first and foremost upon separation.
Oh no, we found the Gnostic sex cult, oh no! If we really think about revolutions throughout history, almost all of them were underground. The leaders started somewhere, and I do see this as that. Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. I mean, there is something like if we're talking about like, I mean, these are queer anarchists. So when we already know that they consider the alteration of the body to be sacred, and we also know that when they're talking about queer, they're not using the term trans as in transition from man to woman or woman to man. They use the term trans to mean transform or transcend gender. So really, when they're talking about like the spiritual basis of this, it's not fucking Gnosticism. Don't come in your pants, James. It's not Gnosticism. I know you want it to be Gnosticism, but it's not actually Gnosticism. What they're talking about is transcending normativity. That's what they're talking about. They're not talking about a political party. A political party is normative. A political party gets you too close to capitalism. A political party doesn't actually accomplish what they want to accomplish, which is to transcend. I think I've got that right. No, not transhumanism. That is not related. This is not related to what we're talking about. Guys, remember, WEF conspiracy theory bullshit is completely separate from radical revolutionary socialists. I'm not saying it's not a problem. I'm saying it's not this problem. This is not what we're talking about right now. Does anyone have ideas about this? Yes, a political party is reformist. These are nihilists, as we learned the other day in the queer anarchist thing I read on the Inner Circle podcast. They're talking about like nihilism. Let's just go back and listen to this again.
By way of the circulation of a small blue book, some who reveled in flames alongside us became fixated on the proposed reemergence of the party form, the very structure of synthesis that had dominated the
Yeah,
revolutionary
good point.
imaginations of lost generations. Where we came to understand the party as spiritual, they desired a political party. Where we sought forms of connection, they submitted to an apparatus based first and foremost upon separation. The party as proposed by those who penned the Little Blue Book was to be invisible and
What is the Little Blue Book? Does anyone know? What is the Little Blue Book?
thereby avoid the failure of the past century's party form. We remain unconvinced. We had already experienced the death of the party and had already dealt with the authoritarian cult tendencies that followed from it. When the formal dimension of the Bashback network had run its course, we quickly analyzed the moment so as to move beyond it. Following with an excerpt from Criminal Intimacy, a section of the conclusion to Queer Ultraviolence titled On the Party, put it this way,
Yo!
quote, in describing those
Queer Ultraviolence. Queer Ultraviolence is what we listened to last week. That wasn't explicitly ascribed to the Mary Nardini gang, but Human Centipede said specifically that he thought that the person who wrote Queer Ultraviolence was in the Mary Nardini gang. And I agree, it was the same language. Not related to this, Kelly.
participants in Bashback as a form of life, I'm making an effort to discard a whole range of concepts and ways of thinking that should be entirely useless to us moving forward. In particular, I want to be totally done with the notions of identity politics and identity activism. Bashback shouldn't be understood as a sequence of activist endeavors, nor as an articulation of a militant identity politic. To the extent that it can, it was a failure. Bashback was never about queer.
Hang on. BB. Isn't this ironic? BB. Bashback. BB. What else might we have a reference from in history that goes by BB? Little Blue Book is a series of pamphlets distributed touting the virtues of communism. Little Blue Book set out to publish a small, low-priced paperback pocket book that were intended to sweep the ranks of the working class. All right. Thank you guys for looking that up. BB. What might we think of when we hear the term BB? Not Bibi Netanyahu, though I understand why you said that. B, 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 B. Do you guys know where this is from? B. Imagine a whole crowd of people chanting B, 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 B. Does anyone know where that's from? Come on, no one knows where this is from. Are you guys serious? Ding! Ding! Yes! Big Brother. In the 2-minute hate. At the end of the 2-minute hate, the crowd is calming down after they've been yelling at Emmanuel Goldstein for 2 minutes and getting out all of their aggression. And then as the crowd calms down, they go B, 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 B. Big Brother. Isn't that funny? The universe winks.
Issues or queer politics. Instead, the project took as its issue the lives of its participants. Rather than the motifs of victimization and charity regurgitated ad nauseum in activist circles, the Bashback tendency took as its starting point queer life itself. Those within the tendency organized a space within which they could genuinely live, and a network by which to defend that space. I experienced Bashback as an amalgamation of desires, dispositions, acts, processes, gestures, and complicities. Bashback is as much wrapped up in sexual practice as in criminal act, as much in strategy as in style. The process of Bashback and the emergence
Hang on. You are not currently living 1984. This is something, and I appreciate your name. I do. I don't know who you are, but I appreciate your name, but I'm going to dress you down a little bit. Please don't take it too personally. This is something conservatives say when they don't actually want to engage in this. They say, I have to encounter this all the time. We're already living in socialism. We're already living in 1984. We're already doing it. The world is already socialist. The Democratic Party is socialist. No, it's not. No, it's not. And every single time you guys do this and you think you're being smart, every single time you guys say stuff like this, you are diminishing what it actually means. Please stop doing this.
Of its corresponding form of life demands to be read less as a what or a who, but instead as a how. This how is the how of organization, but also as much of survival, of violence, of love, of life itself. And so whatever the limitations of what Bashback was, it is the how, the way, that truly demonstrates the insurrectionary potential that I celebrate. We took life itself as our project. Whatever rhetoric it may employ, no party can say the same. The very function of the party is to expand its own operation by vampirizing the life energy of all subsumed within it. We took that organizationalist dead end as a point of departure and had already begun other experiments. Sadly, by this point, the straight comrades had already stopped paying attention to that process of clarification. We've learned a great deal in the last decade, most of which can be summarized by simply saying that we did not know what we were doing. Finding ourselves now in this position to speak across time, having an opportunity to reissue these words to some who might find them for the first, we have a responsibility to clarify. These initial words are not political. They are magical.
Oh
The
no.
most studied...
We found the Gnostic sex cult again. Oh no, oh no, oh no. But what I will say is this. What I've heard a lot of conservatives and right-leaning people saying about the college protests is they're too organized. They just sprung up out of nowhere. They're too organized. How could they be this organized? They just sprung up out of nowhere. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. They didn't just spring up out of nowhere. Groups like this have been organizing on an ongoing basis for decades. What we're listening to right now is a document written 10 years, a full decade after the Mary Nardini gang first started producing content. And what they explicitly just said is like, listen, man, we didn't know what the fuck we were doing back then, and we made some mistakes. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, we are going back to clarify our position on a couple of things. But what we should be taking from this is that the left is constantly organizing. There is never, ever, 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 ever a time in which the left is not organizing. You guys call them professional activists, right? But they're not professional activists and that they're all George Soros funded. It's that this is what they do. This is what they do all the time. They set up mutual aid networks. They set up collectives. They set up decentralized organizations. They're constantly communicating with each other. They're constantly having these events in anarchist and revolutionary bookstores all over the country. They're constantly doing stuff together. They're constantly protesting. They may not have the biggest protests, but they're constantly out there protesting. They're constantly preparing. They're constantly making flyers and making content and writing books and teaching classes and doing all those things. The organization never stops. And so every single time that conservatives kind of like get this idea in their head, they're like, this just sprang up out of nowhere. Like I actually had the QAnon shaman say this to me about the college protesters. The QAnon shaman was like I was telling him, I was like, they aren't funded by George Soros. And the QAnon shaman was like, oh yeah, who are they funded by then? And I said, they're entirely self-funded through publishing donations, dues, events, things like that. And the QAnon shaman was like, no, that's impossible. This just sprung up out of nowhere. No, it didn't. This did not spring up out of nowhere. Not, and by the way, the college protests started right after October 7th. So not even the college protests specifically sprung up out of nowhere. That did like just because the encampment started one day, that was a long, months-long progression of the protests escalating and escalating and escalating and escalating and escalating. The reason that conservatives think it sprung up out of nowhere is it wasn't being covered by their influencers in the news cycle. Exactly, Stevie J. I haven't heard of it, so it doesn't exist. It's not real. But the reality is that even before October 7th, the same groups that are pushing the college protests were organizing before that. The Party of Socialism and Liberation, we have them on video from 2022 saying the riots in 2024 are going to be even greater than they were in 2020. And now the Party for Socialism and Liberation is one of the main groups that's coordinating the college protests across all the college campuses all over the country. So it's like, the organization is perpetual. No, they weren't. This is bullshit. Please stop looking at headlines and assuming the headline is accurate to what is in the article, because I know where you got this from. You got that from that New York Post article. Well, did you actually read the New York Post article? Because the New York Post article was like one activist in one organization had a fellowship one time, and then that's translated to mean the entire organization is Soros funded, which it wasn't. No, bro, you are the one missing the context. You are the one missing it. You want to come into my chat with the phrase whiteness means capitalism is your moniker? You need to do fucking better. You obviously didn't even read the goddamn article, because I did read that New York Post article, and what it said is one activist got a fellowship one time and this other activist got another fellowship one time, and then that was extrapolated to mean all of the activists were funded by these organizations, which was not true. And by the way, the fellowships that they got, if you actually read the article, were from years ago. The college protesters, the groups involved with the college protesters, couldn't even afford fucking takeout, bro. So be better. You want to call yourself whiteness means capitalism? I'm not going to have this shit running around with my fucking catchphrase. Marxists take advantage of a crisis to destabilize. Indeed they do, Tate, and indeed they do. And they were ready to go because they are constantly and perpetually... You're going to tell me to shut up? You're officially banned from my chat. Go away, change your fucking handle, never use it again. You are banned. You come into my chat and you tell me to shut up? Fuck you. This is why conservatives lose. Because when they are presented with clear evidence that they are wrong, they get their fifis all in a twist and they think they're being oh so smart, but they can't even read the fucking New York Post article to find out what they're talking about. Politico had an Article 2 with no receipts beyond a few teaching grants. Never look at the headlines of articles, guys. If you're going to look at information, then read the fucking article. Yep, dude had his name revoked. Do not ever, like, there are people that use my images and things, and there are people that use my taglines and things, and if you're going to use my shit, you need to be on top of it. I appreciate the homage, I really do, but do not use my shit if you are not going to pay attention to what's actually going on, and especially not if you're going to come into my chat and tell me to shut up when you are obviously and clearly wrong. That obviously doesn't work out well. Anyway.
Practitioners of magic will tell you something remarkably similar to the lifelong insurrectionaries. The secret is really to begin. Between the inquiries of the chaos magicians and the shared reflections of insurrection-oriented anarchists, a whole host of techniques emerge in common. The means to choose a story and make it real by applying energy, the invocation of the dead, queer ancestral working, necromantic visits to Emma Goldman's grave, the reproduction of apocryphal texts, conjuration by the way of magical language, the necessity of abundant sacrifice, fires set to purify, rendezvous below the moon's fullness, and attacks carried out beneath its dark, rites of mourning and revenge, raising hell at the pulpits of the false priests, the interpretation of dreams and omens, the secret names of our beloveds and their encrypted.
Just so we're clear, guys, because I've now had to ban 3 people today for insulting me, there are rules in my chat. Number 1, do not be a dick. You will not insult me. You will not insult other people in chat. If you dare insult me, you will no longer be here. You will not get a timeout. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. If you insult me, you will be immediately banned and you will never be unbanned. And I don't care how much you whine and cry and complain and say, I didn't know, because you shouldn't go into other people's chats where they are teaching something and insult them. It's not good manners, and it doesn't make me think you have anything valuable to add at all. Number 2, no whining. If I tell you to stop doing something, you better stop fucking doing it. And if you argue with me or you complain or you continue to whine more, then you will be banned, and I won't have to listen to the crying anymore.
Sigils scrawled across city walls, visionary states of jouissance and spirit contact by way of dance, the decentering of the self and the openness to the other, the pacts made at the crossroads. These are keys to an otherworldly litany, a grammar of world-making by way of ritual action. World-making because we actually affect the web of power, experientially and reciprocally, by way of our engagement. You see, the world really did end for us in December of 2012 when we lost Ravine. While the world waited out the clock to see if the machines would self-sabotage, we scrawled, "No future," as epitaph for this world we were leaving, not as an effort to
What's
preemptively
Ravine?
snuff out our light, but rather to light up another world.
What's Ravine in Milwaukee in 2012? What was that? The world really did end for us in December 2012
when we lost Ravine.
when we lost Ravine.
While the world
What does that mean? You did not get banned. Can someone Google that? December 2012, Ravine. This is in Milwaukee. I have no idea what it is, bot. I have no idea.
waited out the clock to see if the machines would self-sabotage, we scrawled, "No future," as epitaph for this world we were leaving, not as an effort to preemptively snuff out our light, but rather to light up another world which was already in germination, there beneath the skin. We needed skill sets to engage our friends among the dead, and they in turn gestured towards an animist worldview, toward the inspirited world. We live in a world haunted by all the ghosts of a genocidal leviathan, where the land is full of bones screaming out for vengeance, and the very architecture of these cities filled by all.
We live in a world of genocidal leviathan. Is that like a reference to like the police are killing trans people at black trans people at a disproportionate rate or something like that?
The dead who built it, where every spectacle of inclusion is racked by the evil eye cast by the excluded. We have learned to be in relation, that any space has only been taken back for enchantment and reciprocity in co-creation with these spirits. When we look at the transmutations which the anarchist galaxy has undergone in the dream time of the past decade, it is undeniably other than the heteronormative, boring void into which we first issued these enchantments. Strong, varied, and dynamic queer currents course through our space, tracing previously unimaginable constellations of thought and lives. All the best and all the worst of what we wrote, all our illuminations and our omissions came true.
I'll bet you that Ravine is some sort of like trans martyr that was involved in their group.
Dismissible and petty conflicts in our little world have been elevated to a global and even cosmic stage. The locks we picked opened doors we could barely imagine in strong hearts wherever they lay. If only we had already internalized Diane de Prima's insistence that you can have whatever you ask for, so ask for everything. Because these are magical words, and because our accomplices hear them and respond even beyond the veil of death, we cannot afford to miscommunicate. Let's hold a mirror up to our 10 weapons and supply them with their necessary caveats. These 10 taken together, form a sort of minor arcana. First, queerness in its negative sense. Second,
Starbright, Ravine is not a film. That is not what they're referring to because they say they lost it. There is no possible way that's a film. We need to hinge into common sense. It's got to be some sort of okay. We're now moving on from the Ravine issue. Bot couldn't find anything. People are putting absurd things in the chat that have no basis in reality. My guess is that Ravine was a person, probably a trans person, that was involved in their movement and died through some nefarious means.
normalcy. Third, social war. Fourth, queerness as conflict.
Hang on, we need to go back and start that again.
Fourth, first, taken together and supply them with their necessary caveats. These 10, taken together, form a sort of minor arcana. First,
A minor arcana is a reference to the tarot. We're not doing this shit.
queerness in its negative
Going back more.
mirror up to our 10 weapons and supply them with their necessary caveats.
Okay, we're going back more
These
than that.
10,
Is everyone paying attention? Because they're about to enumerate 10 weapons that they're using to do whatever, fight whatever spiritual battle they want to fight. So is everyone paying attention or are we dicking around in the chat? Okay.
in strong hearts wherever they lay. If only we had already internalized Diane de Prima's insistence that you can have whatever you ask for, so ask for everything. Because these are magical words, and because our accomplices hear them and respond even beyond the veil of death, we cannot afford to miscommunicate. Let's hold a mirror up to our 10 weapons and supply them with their necessary caveats. These 10, taken together, form a sort of minor arcana. First, queerness in its negative sense.
Hang on. Ravine making? What is this? Hang on. Did Human Centipede do it again? Is Human Centipede just like our new fucking bot? Human Centipede might replace you. Human Centipede might be replaced. Oh! Fucking hell. Human Centipede. Human Centipede. Look at this. A link to the Anarchist library, BK Gay Do Crime, for Ravine May King. This was dedicated to this person. For Ravine May King, whose beauty caused the pastor of a homophobic megachurch to froth at the mouth and declare the arrival of wolves to haunt his sheep and cause the sheep to fall to the ground, speaking in tongues and praying for their absent God. Who the fuck was Ravine May King? Something from DePaul University? Hang on. From the Gender Studies Department at DePaul University? Here it is, right here. Look at this. Honoring and remembering and honoring Ravine My King, I guess. Hang on. Ravine My King, who went by Kelsey during their time at DePaul, was a women's and gender studies student and a member of our community. Yes, Mary Bowman teaches at DePaul. She does. Mary says all the quiet things out loud. We feel fortunate to have known them and want to honor them for the many contributions they made to our community and our larger world. We offer condolences to all who love them. Ravine passed away on December 3rd, 2012. They graduated from DePaul as a psychology and women's and gender studies double major in June of 2011. During their time at DePaul, they challenged themselves and all of their peers to think critically about the world and forces that continuously alienate us. They had to respond to liberal students many times in the gender class, making essential racist and misogynist comments with a patience, honesty, and clarity that was admirable and accessible. They were known for their ability to connect with people everywhere, as well as support anyone looking for a way to heal themselves and dismantle the systems that destroy everything. We appreciate their professors taking their work many weeks past deadline and for always supporting and validating them as they struggled through the challenges and contradictions of academia. We miss them every day. So that doesn't tell us why they died. What happened? I want more. Hang on. Nope, that doesn't look right. Was that Ravine? Huh. Anyway, interesting. Excellent find. Well done.
Second,
Hang on.
normalcy.
We're going back to the 10 rules. Sorry. I know we listened to this like 5 times, but we keep getting distracted.
These are magical words, and because our accomplices hear them and respond even beyond the veil of death, we cannot afford to miscommunicate. Let's hold a mirror up to our 10 weapons and supply them with their necessary caveats. These 10, taken together, form a sort of minor arcana. First, queerness in its negative sense. Second, normalcy. Third, social war. Fourth, queerness as conflict. Fifth, the other, the excluded. Sixth, repression and force relations. Seventh, attack. Eighth, a subterranean riotous inheritance. Ninth, space, terrain, excess. And 10th, refusal, the self-described anarchist. In furtherance of this tarot, we present the reversals.
Tarot.
10th, hold onto that moment when you first called yourself an anarchist. Whatever your story, surely it was a refusal, a preference not to, saying no.
Is it possible? Now, I know there's a guy that James Lindsay is pulling from for this Gnostic sex cult thing, Eric something that starts with a V. I know that James Lindsay is pulling from someone else for this. He didn't come up with this idea. He read something somewhere and you know, he's taking it as the God's honest truth. However, is it possible that Voglin, thank you, Reagan. Is it possible that... So we've already talked about how this is written in a kind of a very artsy way. This is written in like a very like English major type of way where they're being flowy and artsy and allegorical. And I have appreciation for it. I do. I write stuff like this all the time. But like, is it possible that the reason that James Lindsay has convinced himself that this is a Gnostic cult is because he's coming across stuff from queer anarchists that like has this type of like flowy, like mysticism, like English lit sort of thing, and he doesn't understand it because he's autistic? And that Lisa Logan doesn't understand it because she's an insane conservative Christian? And they can't... well, no, I'm not saying he's read this, but what I'm saying is, I'm saying like, is it like they're talking about mysticism and tarot and all this stuff, and it's like they're not really talking about it, but they're using that type of language that if you don't understand, like, is it possible that he's come across like just words or phrases here or there? Well, I don't know that we can summarily dismiss that, human centipede, because I came across people within queer anarchist movements and I didn't put two and two together. I've been covering people in these movements for like years. I'm just saying, is it possible that he came across some flowery fucking frou-frou fucking language and didn't understand that it wasn't literal because he's autistic? And Lisa Logan didn't understand that it was, I mean, Lisa Logan's off on some law of attraction thing now having to do with Oprah, but like, I'm just saying, is it possible? Maybe it's not. Yeah, they are equating queerness with a spiritual experience. That's very true. Is that what Eric like Voglin talks about? Maybe I'm wrong, but it strikes me like someone like, okay, yes, James Lindsay is 100% autistic. 100%. There's no doubt in my mind James Lindsay's autistic. Which is part of where his genius comes from and his ability to hyper focus comes from, right? He's a fucking math PhD. I'm just saying, is it possible that he saw some sort of flowery English lit type thing and he saw the words like tarot and mysticism and didn't understand that it wasn't literal?
You may not realize it, but this is the first time in your life you set a boundary.
Okay, so he talks about how Gnosticism is related to mass political movements. But I'm just wondering if it's one of those things, like, because I'm thinking back to, like, I'm thinking about all the queer anarchists that I covered, because I've been covering these people for years. I just didn't realize what it was. So I was like, I was going in on the people, I was going in on the lectures, I was going in on like their social media and stuff like that. But it's like, people who are in queer anarchist subcultures don't announce themselves necessarily. They don't post all over their fucking Instagram like, I'm in a queer anarchist subculture, going to all these secret queer anarchist meetings and doing this. Like, they don't announce themselves. So it's like, unless you know what to look for and unless you start to get some semblance that this thing exists, you don't know it exists. And then, so you can be looking at people that are like tangential to it, but not understand that's the perspective they're coming from because you're not looking for that specific thing. I'm just wondering if this is what's happened. Where, yes, he was inspired by Eric talking about how Gnosticism is related to mass political movements. Fine. But I'm just wondering if he read something somewhere or saw something somewhere that had flowery mystical language around it and he got confused because he's autistic and is going to interpret that like literally when it's not meant. He's a math major. We're talking again, this is like the difference between math PhDs and English literature PhDs. Math PhDs have very rigid mindsets, inflexible. When you're talking about the more artsy stuff, you're going to have a more flexible mindset. I could be wrong. I don't know. I could absolutely be wrong. The writing style is similar to H.P. Lovecraft, horror, flowery, ornate, prose, and the subjects. Yeah, this is the fucking Necronomicon or something. Like this is like what this is. And so if you don't understand that, like it's not supposed to be taken literally. I don't know. I could be wrong.
With a world that attempts to erode your capacity to do so. Find that moment and let that affect and hold firmly to it. Whatever else may be taken from you, they cannot take this. Let's dispense with the tired conversation about the individual and the collective. We need each other, and still each of us needs recourse to that intimately personal effect. Can we leave it at that? In the trying times when we feel alone against the world, we will always have that initiating refusal. If we tend that little candle, we can always find our way back to each other if necessary. The anarchist tension adapts to whatever comes next. 9. Space-terrain excess, reversal. We received and will do our best to transmit this mystery, queer criminality. This is an ancestral current, a we inherited from a long and varied line of rioters, thieves, writers, hustlers, mystics, ranters, freaks, and artists. Like the descendants of any ancestral line, we are the currently incarnated members of that spirit house. Nothing began with us. We are simply the present bearers of that weak messianic potential to make it whole again, to redeem all our dead by way of heaven on earth. In all that we do, we are in co-creation with these spirits. Let's learn to do it well. When we try to take space, or more realistically, to hold on.
See, if you listen to something like this and you hear them talking about, like, we are in co-creation with the spirits, like, and you don't understand that this is not literal, it can be very easy to get this stuff mixed up.
Onto it against the annihilating flows of progress. It is for these reciprocal relationships between each other and all of our ghosts. We are fighting for the survival of a way of life, one criminal, queer, anarchic, mystic, other. Each of these predicates a source of strength, a lineage, a collection of techniques for the survival of people this world has tried thoroughly to destroy. This is why we strive for excellence and excess in all that we do. It has always been about queer forms of life. Beware those who speak about other lives, but not the corpses in their mouth or of the screaming bones upon which they walk. 8. A subterranean riotous inheritance. Reversal. The critique of assimilation is still only understood halfway. The dominant line within the radical queer corners of the professional activist world and the school to publishing pipeline holds that it is enough to simply take the right political positions. So long as one speaks the right language, ethical, here meaning happy, life exists within Leviathan. The impulse to critique assimilation in its first instance refuses this acquiescence. Be wary of any who remind too quickly that we all make sacrifices under capitalism. That is true, of course,
Bing.
but remember that to sacrifice is to make something sacred, to give it up for the spirits.
We all make sacrifices under capitalism. To sacrifice is to make something sacred.
World conditions us to lose things easily because it is always taking them away. We choose to take back power over what we give up, for whom and why. You'll recognize your true friends by the way they answer these 3 questions. There is a subtle difference between careerist and conspirator within a given institution. One way or another, those with nothing to lose but each other, and by extension a whole world to gain, remember one another and act accordingly. It's a matter of priority. This dead world or the ones we are cultivating. 7. Attack, because it is always available and because it is the real marker of the boundaries of our little propulsive heterotopias. Worlds, plural.
Heterotopias.
World making gives us the ability to move our prefer not to into a sideways gesture, a preferring differently, otherworldly. The question of opacity, the closet or passing, is an old one for us. The queers who came before us navigated with several strategies, and it's up to us to look critically at all of them. It's all drag, a mask on our emergent world. The mask conceals the real in order to make attack possible. Realness is always a game played with normalcy. Those who haven't realized this are dangerous indeed. An attack of whatever intensity is a small door through which the real and its world enters. Its world is animistic. Take this into account when choosing your target. All the cosmos is alive and watching and actually matters. If you've followed us this far into the labyrinth, you can always call to presence the energy for even the smallest attack. Let that possibility be Ariadne's thread as we go further. Let these rituals signal to conspirators, embodied and not. 6. Repression in force relations. Repression is the attempt on the part of a decaying world to smother new ones in their infancy. We have withstood them all. The Holocaust and the AIDS crisis respectively destroyed 2 moments in the preceding century when our world outgrew their comfort for it. In both cases, the revolutionaries and the otherwise
Does anyone else find it interesting that they mention the Holocaust in relation to queer?
marginalized died first. Entire generations of our elders have been stolen from us. Remember this when you forget who you are. Remind your friends too if they forget. The state has soft means at its disposal. The criminalization of public parks goes hand in hand with the proliferation of cybernetic cruising apps. The benevolent campaigns of trafficking reformers keep sex workers on the streets or worse. The wealthy will afford their PrEP, while people with...
I mean, it's like John says, the mystical part seems to be trying to make it something like a great spiritual experience. I mean, yeah, they're trying to transcend. To be queer, to be non-binary, is to transcend normativity. Yeah, that's a fair point, Ingrid. That is a fair point.
AIDS continue to die on their doorsteps. The circulation of the images of particular bodies through social media numbs us
It's like
with blue light and distracts from the systematic execution.
It's like they wake up from internalized capitalism and they're saved. Yeah. I mean, yeah, actually, yeah. Yeah. It's like being baptized.
Those same excluded bodies. We have only made it this far by fighting repression in all its forms. Pay attention to those worlds that are fighting it differently. Learn from those who fought it before us. We will need all the various techniques against our shared enemy. We need the healing techniques too. We have inherited so much.
I want to find someone in the Mary Nardini gang or that was in the Mary Nardini gang to interview so bad. I would give so much. If any if by pure happenstance, anyone who was associated with the Mary Nardini gang ever sees this randomly on the internet and you want to talk about it, and I'll protect your identity and you can wear a mask and you don't have to say your real name, but can someone from the Mary Nardini gang please get in? I want to help you spread your message, Mary Nardini gang. Like, honestly, I would give my left fucking foot to interview someone that was involved with the Mary Nardini gang.
Trauma from these failed attempts, but we can choose to
Everyone
heal
project
in
that
these
into the
lifetimes
universe. We're going to
and cannot
manifest
pass
that.
the shit on. 5. The other, the excluded. The core of our world is
I should DM Sophie on Instagram. I should be like, Sophie, do you know anyone from the Mary Nardini gang? Just to see what she says. I bet she does. They all know each other.
Otherness, and so each of us liminally navigates the other worlds. We stand between, always a little extra, too much for any world but the one we're building between us. Pay attention to where you feel other and whom you feel at home with. This is affinity, knowledge of another and of their desires and capacities. This is not deterministic. Ancestral traumas can be overcome, but only by those committed.
By the way, they just talked about affinity in this. In that queer anarchist thing I read on the Inner Circle podcast the other night, they were talking about creating affinity groups. What do we have in workplaces that is around like race and like sexual orientation? They're literally called affinity groups. Affinity groups comes from this. Isn't that crazy?
To that overcoming. This is a matter of hospitality, of the response of a world to the other at its gates. Never separate any concept of reconciliation, for example tikkun olam, from its spiritual grounding in the vision of a living world, of an enchanted materialism. Resist the impulse for homogeneity. Circulate through whatever worlds will have us, and jailbreak the others. 4. Queerness as conflict. To recognize queerness in conflict means to address the residue of a dead world within us, trauma in our bodies, possession by egregores, lies on our tongues. Be humble. Know that you are addressing wounds inflicted upon countless generations. Be gentle with yourself and each other in these matters, but remember that healers often have the bloodiest hands.
Yeah, that's actually really true. What do I think of the new King Charles painting? You know, I didn't like it when I first saw it, and then I saw some of the other portraits that guy did. He actually did a really great portrait of Camilla, and he did a pretty good portrait of Prince Philip. And like, I was actually looking at the new portrait like a little bit closely. I really didn't like it when I first saw it, and then I kind of started to come around to it a little bit. I don't know. I bet it looks different in person though than it does on the internet.
3. Social war. Social war, understood as a movement to expand upon this or that limited conception of struggle, gestures welcomingly to the other, includes the stories of resilience and subversion which disorder any tendency towards a scientific, systematized fetish on the part of militants. 2. Normalcy. We do this because we remember that normalcy is itself our enemy. Avoid those who read the backs of Foucault books while gleefully flaunting their normalizing impulses. In any insurrectionary space, attend to the freaks. The norm arms itself with terror because some truly believe in it. The devotees of normalcy, in its psychic, libidinal, affective, disciplinary, or ideological forms, will be cops when the insurrection dies. 1. Queerness in its negative sense. Q, then, will never be a coherent letter tacked on as a bridge to some list of identities. The past decade shows the poverty or ruin of every attempt to do so. We've said already that these words are magic. We might add that they are weird, W-Y-R-D, the old English for fate and all the other invisible and nonlinear causalities we are woven into, and which gives us the modern word weird. The queerest insurrection demands the weirdest, the most enmeshed in the unseen, the most in relationship with all that teems just beyond the normative filter we are still fighting to unlearn. Find those who straddle that filter.
Do you guys know, is anyone here in Austin, Texas? I don't know if this is still a thing in Austin, Texas, but the last time I was there, which was a long ass time ago, it was like 20. Well, I think I saw it when I was there in 2011, and I think I saw it when I was there in 2016, 2017. I don't know if it's still a thing, but there used to be a campaign in Austin, Texas called Keep Austin Weird. And it was kind of cool because Austin like has like, well, it used to. I don't know exactly. You, Jason, you know what I'm talking about. Is that related to this bullshit? Like, Keep Portland Weird also had that. And it's one of those things where it's like eclectic and artsy and all this stuff. And it is actually like kind of cool, but it's also, is that related to this? How do you know it's not related to this? Who instituted it? Who came up with the idea? Who started it? Because I'll bet you all the money in my bank account, I will bet you all the money in my bank account that the person who started that campaign was a far leftist. And I will bet you most of the things originally associated with that campaign have to do with the left. That doesn't actually matter. That actually does not relate to what I'm saying at all. How many anarchists are there in Portland? How many anarchists are there in Austin, Texas? I know there's a lot. More than any Texans want to admit.
foot in each world. Share your methods. Share what you've learned. Share the stories of your dead. The dead we hold.
Yeah. And what were those small businesses? They were things that were kooky and outside the box. And that sign was also used just on houses as like, that campaign was used as like a motto. If you're trying to promote small businesses, that inherently goes against big business. Again, like, okay, let's just keep going. I don't want to, I really just don't want to argue with conservatives anymore.
Hold in common make us family, some other form of kinship than the norm and its terror. We need each other today more than ever. We want to win this time, to win all the time, and the dead want that too. And zero. Here, now, in this place and time, the mirror of our current inquiry faces the mirror that this project always carried within itself. Mirrors upon mirrors.
How did the slogan "Keep Austin Weird" come to be? The phrase dates back to read something or other, an Austin Community College librarian who mentioned the phrase back in 2000 while calling in a donation. You're telling me a librarian in Austin, Texas came up with that slogan, and we're sure that that wasn't a far leftist?
We are not strangers here. Our enemies have always mobilized the myth of narcissists against the criminal and the queer. These inquisitors and specialists in torture can only do this by subtracting this myth from the enchanted worldview whence it emerges, a view wherein other worlds exist. There are windows between them, and true communication is possible. In the notes to his translation of the True Grimoire, the faggot sorcerer Jake Stratton Kent suggests that this story is in fact an early encryption of scrying, the magical technique in which one uses a mirror to communicate with other spirits and places. Narcissus gazed too long at the underworld and was immortalized as a delicate flower with such a fixed gaze. This is the
So are the queer Marxists or the revolutionary communists more influential? Not saying they aren't both, but learning about just I personally think, okay, so there are two different groups. So the revolutionary communists of America specifically are going to be influential because they are highly organized. They have a war chest. They're not funded by George Soros. It's all through donations and dues and stuff like that. They have organized presence in 30 U.S. cities. They recruit all over college campuses. They recruit in the unions. So they are going to be influential. I think they're going to. I think culturally, queer Marxists are going to be more influential, though, because I think that the queer Marxists are eventually going to co-opt the revolutionary communists of America. Like, they're already starting to. The revolutionary communists of America don't know this because they don't want to believe this is true. They think they're all comrades, yada yada, blah blah blah, whatever. But they're going to get co-opted. The queer Marxists, like, this is what they mean by social insertion, which I covered in the latest episode of the Inner Circle podcast on the Substack. So I think ultimately the queer Marxists are going to be more influential because A, it's the queer Marxists who are capturing the youth right now. B, they're the ones co-opting the organizations. C, they're the ones creating culture. Keep Austin Weird was never trademarked because commercializing is the antithesis of weird. Huh. Imagine that. So you're saying to keep things weird is the opposite of capitalism? Is that what we're saying now? Huh. Good find, Ingrid. Good find.
sign of the immortality of the vegetable world, of the cycle between life and death of the infinite. Each is slightly other, each a different variation on the story. We possess the freedom of discernment and choice. Theorists of games refer to the magic circle, the boundary within which the players agree upon the objectives and the rules. 0, the magic circle. 0, the space of all potential. Be careful what you say in this space. Have your wits about you. What happens here extends to all levels. 0, from nothing and returning to it. 0, always the fool.
The Palestinian cause is just something they're using in order to push their agenda. The people who claim most of the people who claim to care about Palestine don't actually care about Palestine. They care about abolishing capitalism. They're just using it to push their agenda. Now, there are people who legitimately do care about Palestine, but the majority of protesters you see don't give a flying F. They're just using it as a way to push their ideology. That's it.
Stranger entering seemingly from nowhere. Who are you? Where are you from and where are you going? The skeleton has been here, frenzied before. The meme described above detourneed a bit of propaganda from California, dating back to the 1880s that vilifies the queer and anarchist currents then present on these shores. The skeleton never left. She remains present along the diasporic threads which have always undermined the southern border. She is the holy death, the patron of criminals and queers, of exiles from worlds. She wears other robes, but she insists as the constant reminder of our own mortality and of those we've already lost. If the messianic currents within Western magical traditions are true, and that the final judgment is the return of the dead, then the passing of that moment means our dead are among us. The ancestors have returned, and they are insisting that we have a chance to make it whole again.
Oh!
The task remains to put our ways in common. This has been Be Gay, Do Crime.
You know what the reference to mysticism is? It's the reference to fucking indigenous. The indigenous ancestors, the indigenous rituals, because they view indigenous to be the opposite of cap. That's what this is. Okay. I'm starting to understand now. All right. I might have to listen to that a couple more times, honestly. Like, it was a little flowery for me. It was a little much. A little esoteric. I don't know that I really understand a lot of their references in it, but maybe the understanding of the references will become clear as I start to read more of this queer anarchist bullshit. Where can we go from here after queer anarchy? I mean, I think we're gonna be digging around this queer anarchist stuff for like a minute, but just like, I'm thinking right now, like, where do we actually go from here? Because like, when I started doing this shit 3.5 years ago, I started with DEI training. I started with like your basic DEI training that happens in any organization. And then we moved on to college classes, and then we moved on to like events and stuff like that. And then we found socialism, and I was dicking around with the DSA, and I thought the DSA was like the farthest left. And then we started getting into like the real stuff. We already did horror theory. We did horror theory last week. Then we started getting into like the real socialism stuff, like the radical revolutionary socialists. And I've been dicking around in that for like a year and a half. Like, well, I guess no, way longer than that now. Almost 2 years. Been like, pittering around the revolutionary socialists before deep diving into that. And now we're getting into queer anarchist literature, which is the guiding fucking mutation for the radical revolutionary socialist left. Where do we go from here? What's next? What is like, because this is going to be like the most extreme bullshit we're going to see on the left, but is there more extreme bullshit than this? Like, how extreme does this stuff go? I don't know. That's kind of my question right now. But we're going to be in this for a while anyway, so and they're always creating new stuff. But I just wonder, is there some next level thing? James Lindsay would argue that the Gnostic cult is next. I'm going to say, no, that's not actually what it is at all. Anyway, So that's the end of Be Gay, Do Crime. We're coming up on the almost, well, it's the 7:40 hour. This is like, yes, this is what this is. I was thinking exactly the same thing. It's like with porn addicts. Like maybe you start off with like milquetoast porn and it's just like basic stuff, and then maybe you do like some BDSM, some spanking stuff, and then you get into the really weird shit after that. Like then you go to the unmentionables. Queer nihilism is our next one. Ugh. The Talmud. That's funny. All right. An interesting show today. I need to think about that one a little bit. As a reminder, guys, I will be back at the 9:30 hour with Joshua. This is way more than Fat Studies, Trendlin. I mean, but Fat Studies is going to be part of this. Like, Fat Studies is under queer theory, so Fat Studies is going to be part of this. As a reminder, guys, we are doing Nothing Remotely Controversial with Joshua at 9:30 tonight. So I'm going to go get some dinner and I'll be back in a couple hours and we'll do tarot cards and that sort of thing. Also, as a reminder, tomorrow we are having a very special guest in terms of Noah from Midwestern Marks joining us. Noah is a communist and he's going to come talk to us about being a communist, and we're all going to welcome him and we're going to treat him nicely and respectfully, and we're going to ask him good questions. And I want everyone to be thinking of questions that they would like to ask Noah, because this is our opportunity. We don't get to talk to communists every day. So we want to make sure we can ask him what we can and maybe get him to say the quiet part out loud if we're being really fancy about it. So look forward to that tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we are taking a break and we are going back to Jesus, and we're pissing off the Christians. And Adam Green, who looks like a Viking, is gonna come talk to us about why Jesus wasn't real. And he's really smart. He's got a lot of interesting stuff to share. And so we're going to take a little bit of a break from socialism and queer anarchism and all that stuff. And so that's going to be on Thursday. So if you are really Christian and you're going to be offended by the fact that we're talking about how Jesus wasn't real, just don't come on Thursday. Okay. You're allowed to be Christian. You're allowed to believe whatever you want, but I don't want to see anyone complaining in the chat. If you're coming to the Adam Green thing, then I want you to actually come with an open mind and good questions, and don't be a dick about it. He's allowed to believe whatever he wants, okay? Anyway, I mean, if you want to try to debunk him, like, you can give it your best shot, T-Bone Man, but what I will tell you is Adam does his homework. Adam is coming with a slide deck. He's going to show you stuff on the screen. And so if you're going to debunk him, you better bring your fucking A game, because you're not playing with an amateur. You're playing with someone who knows his stuff, who has been debunked, or who have had people try to debunk him many, many times before. He knows how to argue these points. So as long as you do it respectfully, I don't really care. And I'm sure he's ready for anything you guys throw at him. I just want expectations to be managed. Let's ask Adam about Turning Point USA. I mean, I guess we can. All right, guys, I'll be back in a little bit.